Well, hello again, and welcome back to the Wives Club. My name is Margaret. I am just like you. I am a patron of Mr. Kevin Samuels. I simply booked a session with Kevin to ask for his permission to stand up a community of like-minded and marriage-minded women within the privacy of his Patreon group. And I am so grateful. Not only did Kevin give us his permission, he actually came up with the name, the Wives Club. So we meet each week to review Kevin's shows, to talk about our action items, our lessons learned, to improve our outcomes, and this is our way of giving back. I am a former wife in the Atlanta area who will let the other wives introduce themselves.
And I'm a future wife from the Boston area and happy to have another discussion today.
Absolutely. And Lisa, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa. I am a current wife in the South Florida area. Happy to be back.
Thank you so much. And Hermesha, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hermesha. I am a former wife in the North Carolina area.
Fantastic. All right, you guys. Well, it's story time again. I had a run-in with a Ph.D. So I am going to kind of lean in and tell you guys what happened, because the remnants may or may not still be among us. No, everything's fine. But I've shared with you all, I am an Airbnb hostess. I enjoy welcoming others into my home. I've had great guests and great experiences, but every once in a while, I get a doozy, and I had a doozy experience that I want to share with you all. You know, I said sometimes listening to Kevin's characters, I think, oh, he's just putting on, this can't really be how it is. But I had an experience. So a young man booked my Airbnb from the Louisiana area, said he was in town and he was going to be coming with his partner. So, of course, we love everybody here, you know, want to be inclusive. So I was expecting, you know, 2 men to show up, and I was prepared to host them. I try to message my guests before they arrive. What time should I expect you? Please pick a 4-digit code, because I set up a lock code just for them that I immediately delete once they check out, for all the reasons I'm sure you understand. So I never got a response back from him. Turns out that he was messaging me from his laptop and it wasn't coming through. So I'm here, I work from home in Zoom meetings all day, just like this. And I figured, well, worst case scenario, somebody's going to come ring the doorbell because there's no code to set for them to come in. So I'm here and I'm working, and the lock that I have on my door is a keypad that beeps when someone's trying to come in. And so I heard someone trying to beep in, and I knew it wasn't going to work because I have to set the code. So I get up and I walk to the door because I have to open it. Apparently, one of the messages that he had sent me was the code that he wanted, but I never received it. So when I went to the door, there were 2 women standing there. One younger, one older. Come to find out, it was a mother and daughter. Now, there have been a couple of times when somebody has booked my room on behalf of someone else. Ideally, I like to be able to communicate with the person who's actually going to be staying here. But if it's an older person or whatnot, I understand sometimes their kids will help out. So 2 women were at the door with pillows and luggage and whatever, apparently ready to come in. So I was confused, but I opened the door. And as soon as I opened the door to kind of introduce myself, hi, I'm Margaret Brown, they both just started walking in the house. And I said, I'm looking at my app and I'm kind of scrolling. I said, you know, is Ross? And the younger one said, oh yeah, that's my boyfriend. He'll be in later. Walks right into the room. And I was just kind of like, okay, rude. And then the older woman, I reached out my hand to, you know, shake. And you know how someone basically like looks you like up and down, kind of like, you know, and kept her hands to herself, like she had no interest. And I was thinking to myself, again, rude. And all she said was, Dr. So-and-so, and also walked into the room. So I'm kind of like, that doesn't mean a hill of beans to me. I've been messaging a man whose name is Ross, who I am expecting. Apparently, the girlfriend and her mother are here. And I'm thinking, my room is only set to capacity of 2. There's only 1 bed in there. I charge for extra guests. There's all this stuff going on and nobody's communicating. So of course, my spidey senses are on 10. So I'm immediately trying to message the guy who booked the room. I'm asking him, I've got people here. I don't know what what I found out or what I suspect happened. I think sometimes one, the home training and the way, how people just come on Kevin's show and they just get right into what they want to talk about, don't even introduce themselves properly, the lack of home training. So I come back to my laptop because I'm working, and the mother comes out of the room. And instead of asking, sometimes, people need extra things that aren't in the room. She was walking around my house, like looking for a place to plug something in to charge. And I was like, hi, can I help you with something? Dr. So-and-so, I need to charge my phone. And I'm like, why do you keep telling me you're Dr. So-and-so? That doesn't mean anything. You are a guest in my home. I don't know if she didn't know that I was a homeowner. Sometimes people set up Airbnbs kind of like not a group home, but like a boarding house where each room is like rented out and people just share common space. This is not that. I live here. I rent out 1 room. You have a dedicated space. And so I told her there's a power strip in the room next to the desk. So she was like, oh, okay. She's kind of giving me the attitude, another older Black woman. So then the third and final straw, she comes out and she sits in the living room and she starts taking a call on speakerphone loudly, talking to people. Yes, this is Dr. So-and-so, da 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 da. And I'm just like, for the love of God, I don't care. You've got a PhD, whatever. You're bossing people around. You're saying this and that. And when she got off one of her calls, she was like, Happy Women's Month to you, instead of just goodbye. So I was like, okay, we got one of those. Somebody gave you a certificate and you were just too high and mighty to realize how you come across, how rude and disrespectful. So when I finally got in touch with Ross, who's the person who actually booked the room, he told me that they didn't know, they're here to visit family. They didn't know that the mother would be traveling. He was going to handle it. And within minutes of me finally connecting with him, they were up and out and mom never came back. So many lessons from that. Number one, we need men and we need the structure. Women sometimes who have in their mind a reason to be better than can be unruly and out of control without a man to yank your chain. It has happened to me. I have seen it happen to my mom. We all need it at some time. When he finally came in, he was working, so he did come in later that evening. He came to introduce himself. He asked if it was a good time. He apologized for the miscommunication. He explained to me what happened and said that she would not be returning. So I don't know what happened, but obviously, the younger version of that came right in, didn't even explain herself. Oh, yes, I'm the girlfriend. He's working. He'll be in here later. Just blew on past and went to the room. And then when I saw how the mother conducted herself, I thought, apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So the lesson learned, ladies, all of us with our accolades, I will never tell anybody that I went to an elite school or I have an advanced degree or a 6-figure salary or whatever. If my behavior is not becoming, does not represent myself well, the way that my parents raised me, None of that matters. So all of this, I'm a PhD because you paid money, which is great. You know, I believe in education for someone to give you a certificate to hang on the wall. But again, single, difficult, now a burden to someone else. Again, it was a zinger. So I finally got it off my chest. Thank you all for listening to the story time. I'll pass it over to you.
Oh my gosh. You can't make it up, right? You can't make it up. I really enjoyed that. I hope you guys did too, because it's just, I mean, you meet these characters in real life. And for those of us that have been watching for a while, like it's crazy how that manifests and just kind of shows up. But it's true. It's more widespread than we know. Right. So for future wives, I'm going to shift gears here. I want to talk about competition and how things are in the field. I like to kind of give you guys a report on what the status is like. But I think when we talk about when Kevin talks about being competitive, right? Because he was mentioning that to one of the women, and just kind of asked her a few questions on Instagram Live the other day, like, hey, how are you putting yourself out there to be found? Are you leaving your house? How are you going to meet anybody if you don't leave your house, right? All those questions are important because when it is time to meet someone, you need to be prepared for that moment. Meaning, you know, here's the, you know, the investments I put into myself to be ready for this, right? I'm able to go into conversations and say, hey, you know, I went through some therapy. I've had some time to be single for a little while. I've invested in femininity and sophistication training, you know, all those different things to kind of show them like, hey, you know, like I'm ready to prove it. Because we talked last week about the vetting process and what that looks like. Because here's the thing, as Black women, we are now battling other races, really. And our men, there's just, you know, there's a scarcity of, you know, really, really highly sought after men. And if we are very highly sought after women, it's an instant match when it happens, and it will happen fast, right? So I just want to just let you guys know, like, you know, really be prepared for that. Because, you know, like I see how women are competing, and they're competing very hard. It is definitely, as Kevin mentions, blood sport. But you have to represent yourself well and be confident in your own brand and confident in your own image and who you are, because that's what's going to set you apart. And when the right person comes along and you meet that person, it's more likely to strike a match. So I just wanted to share the status of the field. But, you know, don't be afraid of competition. Just, you know, kind of refine who you are and bring your best self to the table, because that's definitely what's going to work. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Maggie.
No, you're absolutely right. Thank you for the perspective. What does Kevin say? From the field where the work is real? You know, I think it's really important. I mean, even though, you know, I tell these stories and we all have these experiences, it is kind of a wake-up call, because when you watch Kevin's shows, you're like, okay, that's over there. It's really around us. And as the elder in the group, you know, I'm closer to 50. Winter is coming, and for some of us, winter is here. So that competition piece and how you have to stand out matters now more than ever. But Lisa, I'm going to turn it over to you. What did you have this week?
Oh, okay, let me get it together. Whew. Okay. I lost my train of thought. Okay, y'all, I'm a mom. I got a 4-year-old running around, and I lost my train of thought. So let me get it together. Okay. Okay, I would think about to a show about there was a lady, and she was married and she had 2 kids. And I think she was saying that she separated from her husband for like a year. Her youngest child was 2 years old. I think she had 2 boys or something, but they were married. They were like, she'd been married for like less than 3 or 4 years, and both kids were like under the age of 3. And apparently the reason she was separated from her husband and they were like stayed away from each other is because one of the kids had an accident, and she didn't like the story or whatever the husband said happened under his watch. And I'm like, and Kevin and everybody in the comments were like, you know, she's like, I can't believe what the toddler says compared to what my husband said. And he's like, it's a toddler. I just went through having a toddler. They don't talk much, and I have a 4-year-old, and it's still hard to understand her sometimes. So like, how are you gonna understand what a toddler says? Because Kevin asked, was the police involved? Was there a police report? Did your husband get arrested? Did child services get involved? And she was like, no, nobody's arrested. Is he separate? Is he mandated to keep away from the child or anything? No, I just, because of my motherly instinct, she just kept saying, my mother, I just don't, protecting my child. I'm like, and Kevin's like, this is your husband. It's not your boyfriend or your baby daddy. This is your husband. And you guys are the parents, not just you. You don't just become super mom and say, oh, he's shut away from the kids and everything. And that whole episode or the conversation, it it really made me mad. Just like Kevin got mad. He was like, no, ma'am, your husband may have made a mistake. Kids have accidents. Things happen. I mean, people have accidents. I broke my leg, she was talking about the baby had blood and it was just, I don't know what to believe. And his story wasn't right. I'm like, maybe your husband made a mistake and he got scared in the moment or whatever happened. But I'm like, when I listened to her story and what she was saying, he's like, is the father is he not allowed to see the child? Is her keeping the kids away? And I'm like, you got 2 boys. And so now you're going to make them without their father or whatever. And he's like, you're going to blow up your whole family, blow up your relationship over the fact you can't get over that your husband made a mistake. People make mistakes. I mean, I'm just, the whole conversation just made me real upset. I'm like, how many mistakes have I made in my marriage, in my life, with my health and all kinds of things? And if my husband held me accountable for them so much so that he's going to take me away from my daughter or vice versa, I'm just like, that really just upset me. And I was just thinking about that story. I was really hoping I know it really pissed off Kevin, talking to her. He was just like, he just kind of took her off the show. And it's like, I'm not going to go there with you. But everybody in the comments was like, just her whole demeanor. She's like, I can't forgive him. She wouldn't even go into more detail about but it didn't really even sound like he did anything wrong. It was just like, it was a mishap. Things happen. The child is okay. Can we move forward? Let's just, I would be like, she just sounded like she just needed therapy. She just couldn't find forgiveness or see that, I guess she thinks children live in a bubble and they should never get hurt. So it was really hard to watch and it was frustrating. It really hit me hard because I'm like, I can't live my life hoping my daughter's not gonna, what happened, break a tooth or fall down and break a leg or something. And I don't even have boys. I hear the horror stories of my husband and his brothers and my brother-in-law talks about how rough and tumble they were as boys. I'm like, and the stuff that my brother did, 3 sisters, my brother tore up more expensive stuff, broke one time we had a family reunion, he went and tore the taillights out of cars, out of like 3 vehicles of my uncle. I'm like, my brother was so expensive in breaking stuff and he would just do crazy stuff, jump off of a house and stuff. I'm just like, guys are just crazy. So you have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old and you're worried about something happening to them. What are you going to do when they get bigger? So I can't say I feel for the lady, but I just feel like she needs therapy and she needs to understand the nature of life. It's just like, you can't keep these kids in a bubble and you can't take them away from their father. And I'm like, what about your vows? It was really frustrating. I hope I didn't it's not a downer, but I just thought I had to talk about that because I was just like, wow, that really hit home and it really hurt. It was like hard to watch. So I just wanted to share that.
You're absolutely right, Lisa. I remember that episode, and she is in for a wake-up call. As a boy mom ×2, I have made trips to the emergency room, and I remember those questions. Okay, how did he break his arm? So we have to realize, men are different. Sometimes they let kids learn the hard way, and it's hard because as moms, we're nurturing. So she's going to regret that because now with the 12 and 14-year-old, I'm so glad, even though their dad and I aren't together, that he will step in. And he said, if you need anything, have them meet me in the garage, and I don't want to know what happens. Hermesha, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. What did you have this week?
Yes, that was, when Lisa brought up, that was the story that touched me as well. And I wanted to say a little bit on that, which is part of my point as well. Really, that was just a clear example among many that Kevin has on the show, the importance of trauma healing in a healthy mindset, like truly. And I guess, I don't know, the resident clinician maybe here, where, trauma healing. So all therapy isn't trauma focused, right? And so as a trauma clinician, I say that's particularly because trauma, our wounds distort the actual, like what our perception. And what trauma does is it impacts what you believe about yourself, others, in the world. So when I hear this woman, you know, as a mother with two young children as myself, but as he sort of asked those very poignant questions, like, ma'am, has he been court ordered not to see his children? Uh, you know, did he get arrested? Really trying to get the severity, because the way it sounded like he was abused, or he fell on his head and busted his head and needed 50-11 stitches, and 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 he broke some blood, but he was fine. And he said, how long y'all been separated? Oh, it's been a year, and she's 5 hours away. And she said that he is still wanting to work this out. He doesn't not want to get divorced. And so it really comes down to, when I'm hearing her perception or her mindset, that for me tells me this woman has some childhood trauma. Because when her son got injured, that was a trigger, and it brought up something that was very familiar to her. And now she's in fight, flight, freeze mode. Really, she's flight. She left, moved 5 hours away, and really trying to, you know, protect these kids, but there's no threat of danger. And so when you see situations where the context or the behavior doesn't match the context, you know that the person is really reacting to their past, not the here and now. It's very, very important. As well as a flashback, when somebody's re-experiencing something that happened before and it does not match the here and now and what you're saying, that has everything to do with that person's past rather than their present. And so this is important because Kevin talks a lot about, we have to have the right mindset, but if our mindset is in the past, in our brokenness, then yeah, it's hard to have a renewed mindset if that's the lens in which you're viewing yourself, others, in the world. So the point for me, really, the first point, again, the importance of trauma healing in a healthy mindset, because that impacts everything you do. That impacts how you show up in relationships, that impacts how you parent, how you show up on your job, what you perceive about others, and all of that, right? The other part of that is, I was going to mention with that also impacts women who end up in these relationships with unavailable men. That's also a familiar, almost like a trauma response as well, because there's somebody in their history that reminds them of being unavailable. And so I'm going to stay with you to earn my love so that you can see me. And, you know, you kind of stay in this unhealthy cycle. There was a situation where the woman was sleeping with a married man and had a 2-year-old as a result. And the man was literally still married. And he's like, well, how come ma'am, why hasn't this man divorced? This has been, y'all been together for 4 years. Why are you still with him? And she couldn't really answer that. But again, he's just unavailable. And it was the two scenarios that was very hard to watch. And hearing the women, how they're processing this, I'm like, as a clinician, I'm like, wow, that's just a redoing of the familiarity, the history. And unless we go there and to reprocess that, to leave the past, that stuff's going to follow you. And here we are. And we see women in these relationships, unfortunately, but then also in this really sad scenario with the 2 kids and the lady moving away, you know, really keeping unfortunately men from their children, and it's just not a good look. And it's not, and I think about the children in this as well. So trauma healing, healthy mindset, they both go hand in hand. And yes, not to take that lightly. I think, quite frankly, if I may, I think we all just need therapy. I mean, we are all recovering from something. And it's often good if you've started therapy and you've gone weekly, that's typically the recommended frequency in the beginning. But there's a maintenance phase that we as clinicians have our clients in. If you go like once a month or once a quarter, just almost like a refresh, because the truth is the 95% of our functioning, it's outside of our conscious awareness, 95%. So only 1 to 5% we're conscious, we're mindful of. So it behooves us to often be checking in and having an objective view, whether a coach or, I would say, a trained therapist, to help you navigate situations that can be triggering, that can bring up those old wounds and keep the past the present, because we want to keep the past the past. So that's what I have to say on that point, and I'll turn it over to you, Maggie.
That was fascinating. You know, Hermesha, you said something that actually is going to bring me to my second point when you talked about the woman who I remember in that interview, she couldn't even articulate or refused to articulate what specifically happened, right? Which I had some questions about that. She just kept saying her trust was broken. And if the children are that small, how many of us remember anything at age 2 or 1, right? So let's say you fell. I had one of those kids that, rolled down the stairs. Sorry, but and I tell him the story now. He was a fast crawler. He zipped away, and I felt horrible as a new mom, and he laughs about it now. But they will remember that you moved away from dad. They will remember that dad wasn't there, and as a divorcee, I'm actually um, proud of the way that we have co-parented. My ex-husband lives 20 minutes away, and even though he's remarried, I have said that a lot of times teachers or coaches don't even know that we're divorced because of the way that we conduct ourselves for the sake of the children. When he comes to pick up, we sit down and have a family meeting about how the boys were this week. When he's dropping off, we have a family meeting to plan for the next week, and we're just able to get it done. I remember years ago hearing someone say, don't ever marry someone you wouldn't want to be divorced from. And I never forgot about that. Of course, when you're, getting married and you never think it's going to end, you just focus on the here and now. But then when you're on this side of it, you really have to live a life. You're, in my opinion, always going to be family, if there's children involved. So my final point for this week, Kevin did a show about modern women being laughable. And I believe it's about the conditional femininity. And this one, to me, we are going to have to get a handle on. We see this in this equality movement. Modern women can be so headstrong about what they want. But ladies, this war in Ukraine has got everybody's eyes open. It is crickets now. Where are the women fighting for the right to bear arms and go to the front line? So, it's really, I agree, it is laughable to say, I'll be feminine when. It really is just the essence of who you are in every form of life. You can, be feminine, happy. You could be feminine angry. You could be feminine sad. But just the way that you guard your behavior just really speaks volumes. Because if you can turn it on and turn it off, then it's not real. Now, the good news is that we can all improve that. I've had to improve. We're all moms here, and as a boy mom, especially even though their dad is involved, he's not in the home. So there are times when I have to really like put my foot down and make sure that they know that I mean business. And I have to intentionally like remove myself from the situation and kind of get myself back to that baseline of who I am and how I want to be mom. Luckily, I am that most of the time, but there are times when, unfortunately, I have to be more masculine than I would like to be. And it's not attractive. And I don't enjoy being in that space. Men want what they are not. And so if they see themselves in you, if they see manly behavior, Kevin had women, he'll ask women, are you a wife? He'll ask women, do you consider yourself feminine? And just the way that they come on the show, with deep baritone voices and yeah, what's up? And dropping the N word and this and that. Just so um, rough around the edges. Ladies, especially younger ladies, it's not becoming, it's not cute, it's not attractive, and it moves you farther and farther from the goalpost. If your goal is to be married and you want a masculine man, because believe me, you do want a masculine man. Take it from someone who learned that years later. You're going to have to be intentional about being consistent. And whatever work that means, whether it's coaching, training, I've had to work on slowing down, and lowering my volume because I can be very excitable. I can talk really fast. I can have gestures. And that has not made people want to get to know me more. It's actually made people kind of say, that's a lot. But what I've softened and I've put in the work to make sure that I am the type of woman that a masculine man would want, the benefits outweigh the work that I put in. So I just wanted to talk about conditional femininity, and I'll toss it back over to you.
So thank you, Maggie. And I think we're right on, as far as how this conversation is flowing too, right? Like we go from, looking at legacy and looking at how we can break homes if we don't really think about the long-term effects of certain decisions, right? Because the reality is we need men in our lives. Children need dads in their lives, right? Because there's certain things that we cannot teach from a woman's perspective. And there's certain messages that come harder from a father, right? And so I really like that perspective that all of you have kind of added into that. I kind of want to go to one of Kevin's questions that he posts on Instagram. I really like those because you get to see what people say, and you can see what the responses are, and you can just see this collective mindset. So I think the common thing that we're all seeing is that there are a lot of dangerous mindsets out there, right? And those things are not helpful for families, right? Because when we think about having a husband or having a leader of a family, men are kind of, if a man's going to marry you, you'll hear Kevin talk about legacy, right? And one of the questions for this week was your perspective on, we are not your partners, right? I think we talk about partnerships, and for some reason, people are walking into things thinking that it's a partnership. You'll hear a lot of young people say it. And we've been kind of having these discussions here on the Wise Club, but it's not a partnership, because I need to let you lead the family. I want to be under your leadership. I want to be under your protection, right? But mostly thinking about your legacy too, right? I think that sometimes we don't focus on that as far as like what a marriage is really, really for, and effective marriages that work, right? I think a man's got to be able to play his role and play it well. And we're there to complement, let me offload the things that you don't like to do, or let me balance it out with feminine energy, right? Think about that couple going into a room, like the man's playing his role, the woman's playing her role. They have very different identities. They have very different energy, right? All of those things matter. But for the young future wives that are watching, just kind of really start to think about effective marriages that work. Do some research on effective marriages that work. Look around you, start thinking about that, ask questions, because it's a contract at the end of the day. Sorry, I put on my legal hat. It's a contract, and there's a lot of implications to that contract. Divorces don't always happen. It doesn't need to happen, but you got to really think about what you're signing up for, right? So I think, we have to think of this concept of getting married and having kids as something that is long-term. It has lasting impact. So, going into that, if we're going to say, I want to get married, you have to be very, very serious about walking into it and doing your research and being well prepared. I know that's something that I've really thought about, and just kind of taking a family law course and really learning more about the protections that are happening. But I think the reality is we do have to be honest about the fact that some men are really suffering because of past divorces and things like that. It has lasting impact on them as well. And I think more men are being careful and reluctant about entering into marriages. So that's why I just wanted to let ladies know, like, because of this this cautiousness on the man's side, we have to come forward with being honest and being authentic, because you're signing that contract too. There's risks on both ends, but it doesn't have to be risky if you do it the right way. So kind of all over the place rambling. But I just wanted to be able to kind of share that with you guys, because it's not a partnership. It's a contract, but there are ways to have healthy relationships with having that contract as well. So just wanted to share that this week.
No, you're absolutely right. And I love when Kevin says being a wife is a role. All of us are educated. And I remember, when you're coming out, when you're young and you're in college, that like, oh, we're equal. I can do what a man can do. Take it from the older one in the group. As we age, because this is what's happening to me, and I asked my guy and he confirmed it, I am more and more slowing down, wanting to age gracefully. He is more and more laser focused with a grit on the future because we all see that we have more time behind us than in front of us. So I want to nest and enjoy the life that I've created. Men who want to leave a legacy are even more determined to get done. So go ahead and put the work in while you have the stamina to do that work so that you'll be in that place of protection later on. All right, so Lisa, I'm going to come back to you.
Yeah, I agree. I love to nest. I am a nester. You asked me like 15 years ago, you want to sit in a nest and be a mother bird? I was like, no, I want to run the world. But no, I do not. I want to nest. I want to make my house and my environment comfortable for my family. I want to prepare meals for them. I just want to nurture, and I just want to sit at home and nest and let my husband go out and slay the dragon and bring the meat home and I'll cook it or whatever. But God, I got so much going on. I was really thinking about what I could talk about. But our conversation is so good. The only thing I was thinking about is the whole Ukraine thing. Like, just seeing these women and children saying goodbye to their husbands, and they have to send them to Poland or wherever they got to send them to on the news lately. It's really been big on my mind because, let me put this, I've been to Ukraine and I've been to areas in that part of the world. And I'm thinking about when I was there maybe 4 years ago, those people are just like us. They go to stores, they go to grocery stores, they have their kids and stuff. I mean, they're in another part of the world, but they have lives like us. And then for all that, I'm just talking to my husband. I'm like, now they're running to Poland and they're saying goodbye to their husbands, and the men can't leave because they have to defend, the men of that country can't leave. They have to defend their city or in the country they live in. So they have to say goodbye to their families. So I'm like, I'm telling my husband, like, oh, why? What are they making them do that for? And I do remember, because I'm a military child, and my dad had us all over the world because of his travels. I used to live in Spain as a young teenager. I moved there when I was 18, and I worked at a pizza place, and I had to serve the Spanish military and the American military. And I learned in Spain, like in a lot of countries, all men, no matter what you're, not all men have to serve in the military for that country, for their country. And that's how that country, because Spain's not as big as us, that's how that country keeps their military full. Young men from like 18 or 17 to whatever, they have to do 4 years in Air Force or whatever their version of different Navy and all that. And I worked at a Navy base. So I always saw the Navy, the Spanish Navy guys. And so I was like, I asked my husband, well, those people the men in Ukraine, are they military trained, or were that dude working on a computer 2 months ago and now he's being told to go make a Molotov cocktail? My husband's like, I'm not really sure. I have to research it. But and then we just started talking about, in this country, fortunately, we have enough people to serve, men and women who volunteer to serve and fight for the country, like my husband and my family members. So we don't have to do that in this country. But going back to, thinking about the women and the children that are leaving, and they have to say goodbye to husband, brothers who are old enough to fight for the country, whether they've been trained or not, because I still don't know yet. I have to find out. But it was just really hard to see people saying goodbye to their dad or brother on the train and not knowing if they're going to see them again. And 2-3 months ago, they were celebrating the holidays and living a normal life, and all of a sudden they're being invaded. So I don't know. I just thinking, if I was a wife there having to say goodbye to my husband, or if I wasn't a wife, and it was just me as a single woman, or someone with kids, or like I saw a grandma who she was on the news yesterday talking about she's trying to get to somewhere in Nevada or something to get with her family, but she was just a woman over 60, a grandma living there, and all of a sudden she don't have nowhere to go. And I think luckily she had got somewhere safe. But I said all that to say we need men, and they serve a function. And if we place ourselves in a scenario like what's going on in Ukraine, where would you be? I guess I'm putting out a question to everybody. Where would you be if you were wherever you are in life, whatever situation you are, married, single, whatever? If you were in that situation, what would you do? What would your life look like? Or what would you be doing? Would you be fleeing with your children? Would you be saying goodbye to your husband, your boyfriend, your parents? Would you be in college? I really can't even think about it for myself, because my husband, when my daughter was born, he was still in the Air Force, and he had been in the Air Force for like 6 years. He never got sent away. The moment our daughter was born, 5 months into her birth, after she was born, my husband got sent to Turkey for like almost 8 months. So I had to go back to the city with my parents, Jacksonville, and with my daughter, and they helped me out with her, but because I didn't want to be alone with my daughter by myself for 6 or 7 or 8 months that my husband was gone. So that was really hard. But to think my husband had to go off to war or do something like that in the middle of an invasion, I don't know if I could. I would need a lot of therapy, and I probably wouldn't be available. So just all that is just coming to me. It's hard for me to watch the news. I guess what I'm trying to say, thinking about what women and children and and families are going through. So that was just my 2 cents. I really didn't have a topic, a second topic, but that has been weighing heavy on my heart this week. I just have to limit how much news I watch, because it really does hurt you. It really does affect you sometimes. And I'm a positive person, so I want to keep things positive. So I'm going to try to perk myself up.
Absolutely. No, Lisa, you're right. It's the real world, and the world is real. So we count our blessings because, ultimately we're all the same. Everybody wants to come home at the end of the day the way that they left, So again, the warning, the wall is undefeated. So, make the most of what you can so that you have a network, the security, the family structure, everything that Kevin talks about. All right, Hermesha, we're going to come to you.
Yes. I was just sitting with all of you are saying, and then the umbrella, the umbrella of femininity, and the idea, changing the narrative. I think we're all changing the narrative and renewing our minds from this idea of partnership to it's a role, And I was thinking about that, and I couldn't help to go to Proverbs 31. Because when I think about how Kevin breaks down a high demand woman, or not a high value woman, I think it was that high demand woman, fit, feminine, and friendly, and all these different things. But what he's getting at is the character of the woman. And he said, men will go down in looks to go up in femininity. But femininity is a character trait because it's inside of you. And as you show up, obviously, you begin to exhibit that. And I couldn't help but think about the Proverbs 31. Now, if this lands for folks, I know folks have different faith backgrounds, and, Kevin talks a lot from the Christian's perspective. So I thought I'd just bring that in there as well as a believer. But Proverbs 31, I mean, this is often taught the wrong way to women in churches, I will say. But this is a woman speaking to her son, King Lemuel. That's the context. And she's basically telling him the type of woman he should be pursuing. So this is actually, Proverbs 31 was actually written for the men as they look for the qualities of a woman. So again, that's sort of what Kevin is trying to teach men, and women, we're sort of kind of like ear hustling, if you will, right? But this is true to scripture. So we see in Proverbs 31, King Lemuel's mother telling him in the opening, I'll just read this. Listen, my son, listen. Do not spend your strength on women, your vigor on those who ruin kings. And then they go into the epilogue of the wife of noble character. When you read Proverbs 31, again, this teaching has been taught the wrong way, where it's all about what you do. And then you have women end up in this sort of legalistic and feel like this is such a heavy load to carry. Like, I can't, that's a tall order. Proverbs 31 is like the epitome of the feminine woman, right? But it highlights, when you read Proverbs 31, for those of you who read it or read it again, read it through the lens of the character, because that's what's being highlighted. A woman of noble character who can find, and it goes on, She is worth more than rubies. So she's rare. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing. She works with eager hands. She's a hard worker. She's disciplined. She gets up while it's still night. Not literally, but she's disciplined. So read it through the lens of character. She's discerning or business savvy. She considers a field and she buys it with her earnings. She sets out her work vigorously. Hard worker. Here's a character trait. Opens her arms and extends her hands to the needy. She's hospitable. She's compassionate. When it snows, she has no fear for her household. Why? Character trait. She's prepared. She's thinking ahead. Her husband is respected at the city gates. So he's known and he's, a lot of folks know him and he's respected. She is clothed with strength and dignity, right? A woman of wisdom, faithful in instructions on her tongue, just highlighting some character traits. She does not eat the bread of idleness. So, she's not just wasting time and just not idle. And in any way, you guys know how it ends. Many women do noble things, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her all she's worth, yada, yada, right? But when you read that, read it through the lens of the character trait, which is the femininity that Kevin's talking about, and it's confirmed in scripture. And whether you come from that faith background or not, we can all learn and look up to the Proverbs 31 in terms of her character. And we can all lean into that and grow in that. And that's kind of what we're talking about, as it sounds like a tall order, but we can all grow in that if we're willing to learn and be the highest version of ourselves. And I just want to encourage the women out there with that as an example of the femininity and the role, if you will.
I love that. I almost got a little teary-eyed because it's just been a lot going on for all of us. And so just to be grounded and just to be settled and just to hear, something that we've all heard before, but like when you hear it again, you kind of hear something a little different. Thank you so much, Hermesha, for that. In closing, I'm going to share with you all because I have conversations with my guy who is a high value man. When I first met him, he wasn't, but I've seen the progression. And I asked him, because Kevin stumps a lot of women when he says, what are you going to do for a man? What is your role as a wife? Why do you want to be married? And I asked him, what do you say a wife is supposed to do? And his exact words were, your job is to make sure that your husband is in optimal condition to go out there and take care of what he has to do. So again, there are some standard things that we come, with, home cooking, cleaning. But if that's doctor's appointments, if that's anticipating his needs, if that's, packing lunches, if that's giving him time to decompress when he comes home, you have to study your man. You have to be that feminine counterpart so that he can know that you have the fort under control so that he can go out there and slay the dragons, because I don't want to do it. And I don't think any of us in the Wives Club want to be the ones with that burden on our shoulders. Any final thoughts?
Nope, as always, such a powerful conversation. I really hope you guys take value out of it because there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom here. So we're happy to come back and share every week and really hope you guys are taking something away from it.
Absolutely. Lisa, any final thoughts from you?
No, I'm happy to do all that stuff for my husband, be his secretary, be his appointment maker, because if I'm doing my part and as a mother, I still have to help babies make toast. But if I'm doing my part, he can be great and do his part. And like I've always said, when my husband's great, I'm great because he's the head. And so I'm happy to do that.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely. We don't want them to lose focus. And Hermesha, any final thoughts from you?
I would just say that it's possible. It's possible to improve better than you were yesterday, and take it one step at a time and have the willingness to do so. It's possible, and you'll be amazed. You might look yourself in the mirror and you're like, who is that? Oh, that's me. Oh, hey, girl. Right? So it's possible. It's totally possible. Don't be discouraged. Okay.
Absolutely. We've all had setbacks, but we're here to do the work and to improve our outcomes and hopefully give back at the same time. So that wraps up this Wives Club episode. Again, if you are a patron who is currently married, formerly married, or wants to be married, or even a man who's looking for a wife, we would love to bring you into the conversation. In the description, there's a link with a form that you can fill out to express your interest. We record on Saturdays, and we would love to include you. Until the next time, we'll see you guys on the next episode.